You know, when you read J.R.R. Tolkien, Middle-earth just feels real, doesn't it? Ancient, like it's a lost chapter from our own history. But that incredible world wasn't just pulled from his imagination. Nope. It was built, piece by tiny piece, from the power of language itself. So let's dive in and see how he actually cast that spell. I mean, that's a huge question, right? Where do you even start? A map? A hero? Maybe a big scary villain? Well, for Tolkien, who was an absolute master of language, a philologist, the answer was something totally different. Something much simpler and way more profound.
That was his secret. It wasn't about starting with a picture. It was about starting with a name. The right name. Because for him, the right word already held history, it held culture, it held the feeling, all by itself. Pretty much every part of Middle-earth, from its coziest little corners to its deepest, darkest pits, really grew from the seed of one perfectly chosen word.
So where does a story like The Hobbit kick off? Not with huge armies or fire-breathing dragons. It starts with a feeling of comfort, of safety. Tolkien knew he had to establish this baseline for us, and for our hero Bilbo, and he did it with two absolutely key terms.
First up, the word hobbit itself. Just say it. Hobbit. It kind of feels comfortable, doesn't it? A little soft, maybe a little bit quirky. Tolkien completely invented this word, just plucked it out of thin air. And with that one, single, brand new word, he immediately sets this unique, gentle tone for the main characters of our story.
And then you've got the Shire. Now, unlike the made-up word hobbit, this one is pulled straight from real-world Old English history. A shire was a real thing. It suggests a place that's organized, familiar, rural, and just settled. It feels real, like a county you could actually find on an old map of England.
And that's the magic trick right there. He puts the invented right next to the historical. The strange hobbit lives in the totally familiar Shire. That combination is what grounds us. It makes the fantasy feel rooted in a reality we can understand. It creates that powerful, anchoring feeling of home, the safe place the whole grand adventure has to start from.
Okay, but once we leave that cozy, safe home, the world gets a whole lot more dangerous. And out there in the wider world, Tolkien's names carry a different kind of weight. Even things like swords aren't just tools. They're historical artifacts, and they carry the echoes of ancient wars right in their names.
Just think about it for a second. When the dwarves and Gandalf find those old swords in the troll horde, they're not just picking up some useful loot, they're literally unearthing legends. The simple act of reading the names on the blades connects their little quest to a whole forgotten age of heroes and great battles.
Just look at these names. Glamdring, which means foe hammer, and Orcust, the goblin cleaver. Come on, how cool is that? And these aren't just nicknames, they're actual translations from Elvish, a language Tolkien invented. This gives the swords a real history, a real power. They have a reputation that walks into the room before they do.
Alright, so you've got these epic hero swords, which means you need some nasty enemies for them to fight, right? And just like he built a language for home and for heroes, Tolkien very deliberately crafted the names for his villains to sound harsh, predatory, and just totally alien.
The words themselves just sound mean. Goblins. It's a harsh, kind of guttural sound for a nasty underground race. And then you have wargs. This is really cool. Tolkien borrowed this from an Old Norse word, vargur, which didn't just mean any wolf. It meant a huge, cunning, outlaw wolf. The whole vocabulary of the enemy is designed to make you feel like the wilderness itself is a threat.
As Bilbo's journey moves forward, we start to see that even the geography has a personality. Each place is named to reflect the challenge waiting there. The map of Middle-earth, it turns out, isn't just a map of places, it's a map of the trials, both inside and out, that Bilbo's got to face.
So, let's just trace the journey with these words. First, they hit Mirkwood. That's a real archaic English term, and the name itself basically promises a dark, tangled forest where you're going to get lost. Then, their goal, the Lonely Mountain. The name perfectly captures that feeling of isolation the dwarves have, and the singular massive challenge ahead. And the final boss area, the desolation of Smaug. See, the name doesn't just describe a place, it describes the result of evil, a burnt-out, dead wasteland created by the dragon's hatred.
But here's the twist. On this whole journey, the biggest, most dangerous threats aren't the spooky forests or the tall mountains. No, they're small, beautiful things. Tolkien shows us that the most powerful forces in his world are these objects that promise wealth and power, and they are what drive the story's biggest conflicts.
Let's put the two heavy hitters side by side. You've got the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain. Its name probably comes from an old Gothic word meaning holy or precious. It represents the dwarves' divine right to rule, but it also becomes the focus of their terrible greed. And then there's the One Ring. At first, it's just a magic ring, but its real name points to its singular absolute power. The names of both of these objects basically track the moral corruption that happens when characters start valuing things more than people.
So after all this, what does it all add up to? Well, it reveals Tolkien's core belief, the big lesson at the heart of this whole thing. The most powerful tools you have for building a reality that people can believe in are words.
And that, right there, is the heart of his genius. It wasn't just about telling a good story, it was about linguistic architecture. He was building his world with words as his bricks and mortar. He knew that if the words felt real, if they had history and texture to them, then the world they described would feel just as real.
And here's his secret sauce. He took real words from Old English and Norse and other ancient languages, and he wove them together with his own invented languages like Elvish. The result is this incredible vocabulary that feels totally new and fantastical, but also kind of familiar. It makes Middle-earth feel less like a fairy tale and more like a half-remembered piece of our own history.
So you see, in Tolkien's hands, a name is never, ever just a label. Shire holds the memory of a peaceful community. Orcrist holds the memory of ancient wars. A phrase like dragon sickness perfectly preserves the idea of how greed can poison you. Every single word is a little container for history and for meaning.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. Tolkien showed us that language has the power to literally build worlds and store their deepest truths. It really makes you think, doesn't it? If words are that powerful, what stories, what memories, and what values are we building and preserving with the words we choose to use every single day?